Elon stood frozen. For the first time in years, he had no words. Jimmy clenched his fists. "That bastard just declared war." Keanu stepped forward. "Then let's finish this." Elon exhaled sharply, his mind racing. They needed a plan, but before he could speak, a voice crackled through the Tesla command center. "I have a plan." The room fell silent. Elon turned. Keanu's eyes narrowed. Jimmy took a deep breath, because the voice belonged to someone none of them expected. A man stepped out of the shadows. It was John Wick. Keanu stared in disbelief. "No way!" John Wick, a legend in the underworld, stood before them, his expression calm but deadly. Elon frowned. "How did you get in here?" John smirked. "I have my ways." Jimmy crossed his arms. "And why are you here?" John's eyes darkened. "Because Lucius Kane isn't just an enemy of yours, he's an enemy of mine." Keanu's jaw tightened. The world's most dangerous assassin had just joined their war. Elon, still processing, finally spoke. "You're saying you want to help?" John's gaze was ice cold. "I'm saying I'm going to kill Lucius Kane." Jimmy smirked. "I like this guy." Keanu chuckled. "Told you he was real." Elon nodded, determination returning to his eyes. "Then let's end this war." Elon Musk, Keanu Reeves, Jimmy the Forgotten Soldier, John Wick, the four of them standing together, preparing for war. Elon pulled up satellite footage. Lucius Kane's hideout was a high-security fortress in Switzerland, protected by ex-military killers. John studied the blueprints. "I can get in," Keanu smirked. "So can I." Jimmy loaded his weapon. "Then let's burn this place to the ground." Elon cracked his knuckles. "I'll handle the tech." And with that, the world's deadliest assassin, the most beloved action star, the forgotten war hero, and the genius billionaire set out on their final mission, to end the war before it consumed the future. The night was silent over the Swiss Alps, until a Tesla stealth aircraft soared over Lucius Kane's heavily guarded fortress. Inside the aircraft, Elon Musk, Keanu Reeves, Jimmy, and John Wick stood ready for battle. John checked his weapons with mechanical precision. "No mistakes. We go in, we take Lucius out, we save Grimes." Keanu smirked. "You make it sound easy." Elon, sitting at the control console, hacked into the security grid with ease. "Because it will be. They built their empire on old technology. I build the future." Jimmy loaded his rifle. "Then let's tear the past down." The aircraft hovered over the fortress. A side door slid open. The cold wind rushed in. And then they jumped. They landed undetected. The shadows were their allies. John took the lead, eliminating guards with swift, silenced headshots. Keanu followed, disarming enemies with lightning-fast strikes. Jimmy provided cover, taking down snipers on the rooftop. And Elon. His drones disabled every camera, every alarm. The entire fortress was blind. They moved through the compound like ghosts until they reached the main chamber. There, waiting for them, was Lucius Kane. Lucius sat calmly behind a desk, Grimes tied to a chair beside him. A dozen heavily armed Black Ops soldiers surrounded him. Lucius sighed. "You could have left the world as it was, Musk, but no, you had to play hero." Elon stepped forward. "I didn't play hero. I built a better future. And you? You tried to destroy it." Lucius smirked. "And yet, I'm the one holding all the cards." He pulled out a detonator. "The moment my heart stops," Lucius said, "this entire compound explodes. You die, Grimes dies, and Phoenix Haven burns." Keanu clenched his fists. Jimmy tightened his grip on his rifle. John Wick simply smiled. Lucius noticed. "Something funny, Mr. Wick?" John tilted his head. "Yeah?" Then he shot Lucius in the hand. The detonator flew into the air. Before it could hit the ground, Elon's Tesla drone caught it. Lucius screamed in pain, clutching his shattered hand. "You think you've won?" Keanu smirked. "Number, we know we have." Lucius, trembling, reached for a hidden pistol. John shot him in the head. Lucius Kane was dead. They freed Grimes. The alarms blared. Soldiers scrambled. But it was too late, because Elon had already activated the EMP. Every electronic weapon, every security measure, shut down. Jimmy led the way out. Keanu covered their backs. John took down the last of the stragglers. As they boarded the aircraft, the fortress erupted in flames. The old world had fallen, and the new world had begun. Phoenix Haven wasn't the only city anymore. Thanks to Elon, Keanu, and Jimmy, hundreds of smart cities were rising across the world. John Wick? He disappeared, as legends do. Keanu continued his journey, using his platform to inspire change. Jimmy, once a forgotten veteran, now stood as a global leader in veteran rehabilitation. And Elon? He was still building, still dreaming, because the war for a better world never ends. But this time, the future had already won. The end. The rain poured like silver daggers, piercing the cold, empty streets of Los Angeles. Neon lights flickered, casting ghostly reflections on the wet pavement. A black car skidded out of control, tires screaming, heading straight toward a lone figure standing at the crosswalk. Time slowed. Keanu Reeves didn't have a chance to react. His breath hitched as the car's headlights blinded him, until, out of nowhere, a pair of rough, calloused hands grabbed him, pulling him back just in time. The vehicle missed him by inches, crashing into a lamppost instead. Keanu staggered backward, his heart hammering. He turned to face his savior, an old, tattered man with a beard like tangled wires, his eyes holding the weight of forgotten wars. His clothes were soaked, ripped, and barely clinging to his thin frame. "You okay, man?" the homeless man asked, his voice raw and cracked. Keanu caught his breath. You saved my life." The man just smiled, shaking his head. "Nah, just did what anyone would do." But that was a lie, because no one had ever done for him what he had just done for Keanu. And that night, everything changed. Keanu insisted on taking the man somewhere warm. A small diner, the kind that smelled like burnt coffee and yesterday's dreams. The man hesitated at first, but finally sat down. The heat of the place made his hands shake. Keanu studied him. "What's your name?" the man chuckled. "Haven't used it in a long time, but back in the day, they called me James Jimmy Cole." Keanu leaned forward. "James, you saved my life. Let me help you." Jimmy shook his head. "Don't need saving. Ain't the first time I pulled someone out of trouble. Won't be the last." Keanu frowned. "What do you mean?" Jimmy exhaled, staring into the distance. "I was a soldier, special forces, saved a lot of men in my time, but when I came back home, nobody saved me." Silence. Keanu felt something tighten in his chest. Here was a man who had given everything for his country, yet had nothing left. Jimmy took a sip of the hot coffee, closing his eyes for a moment as if it was the first warmth he had felt in years. "But hey, that's life." Keanu's jaw tightened. Number, that wasn't life. That was failure, of a system, of a society, of everyone who had let this man fade into the shadows, and Keanu wasn't going to be one of them. Later that night, Keanu sat in his car, gripping his phone. There was only one man who could do what he was thinking. He dialed. A groggy voice answered. "Keanu?" "It's midnight, man." "Elon, listen, I need you to meet someone." "Trust me." A pause. "Then, you saved me from those investment sharks that time. Guess I owe you one." "Where?" Keanu glanced back at the diner's window, where Jimmy sat, staring at the rain. "Meet me here tomorrow. I'll introduce you to a man who deserves the world." Elon Musk walked into the diner the next morning, dressed in his usual hoodie and jeans. He was used to shaking hands with billionaires, politicians, and world leaders. But when Keanu pointed to Jimmy, Elon saw something different, a man who had once mattered but had been left behind. Jimmy raised an eyebrow. "Ain't you the Mars guy?" Elon smirked. "Yeah, but today I'm the guy buying you breakfast." As they ate, Keanu explained Jimmy's story. The war, the sacrifice, the betrayal of being discarded by the system. Elon listened, silent. Then he wiped his mouth and leaned forward. "Jimmy, if you could have anything, one wish, what would it be?" Jimmy chuckled. "One wish? Hell, I ain't had one of those in years." "Try." Jimmy sighed. Then, after a moment, he spoke. "I'd build a place, not for me, for all of them, the forgotten ones, the ones nobody looks at twice. A city for the lost souls." He laughed bitterly. "But that's just an old man's dream." Keanu and Elon exchanged a glance. Then Elon grinned. "What if I told you I could make that dream real?" Jimmy's smile faded. "What?" Elon sat back. "A self-sustaining smart city, powered by solar grids, AI-driven infrastructure, underground farming, a place where no one goes hungry, where no one is forgotten." Jimmy blinked. "You serious?" Keanu smirked. "You don't know him very well, do you?" Elon leaned in. "Jimmy, we're going to build your city, and you're going to help run it." Jimmy's hands trembled. For the first time in years, he felt hope, but none of them knew the cost that would come with it. Months later, construction began. News outlets exploded with stories of Elon Musk and Keanu Reeves building a city for the homeless, with a former soldier leading the way. They called it Phoenix Haven, a city built for rebirth. Jimmy was given a new home, a new role. He helped homeless veterans find work, trained security teams, and ensured that no one in Phoenix Haven ever felt invisible again. But then came the attack. One night, a fire erupted in the Eastern District. Security footage showed masked men torching buildings. A message was left behind. Cities like this don't deserve to exist. Keanu and Elon watched the footage in horror. Jimmy clenched his fists. "I know these types. They think power belongs only to the rich. They want to burn down hope before it spreads." Keanu looked at him. "What do we do?" Jimmy exhaled. "We fight back." But neither Keanu nor Elon knew that this war wasn't just against the city. It was against the past that Jimmy had been running from all along. The flames painted the night sky in hues of orange and black. Sirens howled in the distance, but by the time the fire department arrived, half of the Eastern District was reduced to ash. Elon stood in the control center, staring at the destruction on the surveillance screens. His fingers tightened into fists. This wasn't just an attack, it was a message. Keanu sat beside Jimmy, who had gone eerily silent. His eyes, once filled with hope, were now dark pools of something Keanu couldn't quite place. "They weren't just trying to destroy buildings," Jimmy muttered. "They wanted to destroy the idea." Elon's voice was cold. "Who are they?" Jimmy exhaled, rubbing his temples. "Old ghosts." Keanu frowned. "What do you mean?" Jimmy looked away. "Before I became homeless, before I lost everything, I was part of something." His voice grew quieter. "A Black Ops unit, one that was supposed to be erased from history." Elon and Keanu exchanged glances. Jimmy clenched his jaw. "They called us Shadow Unit 17. We did the jobs no one talked about. And when the government shut us down, they wiped our records and abandoned us." Keanu's chest tightened. This wasn't just about a homeless city. This was personal. They know I'm alive. And now, they want to finish what they started. Elon crossed his arms. "So what's the play?" Jimmy's hands trembled slightly. He hadn't fought in years, but he knew this fight wasn't just about him anymore. He looked up. We stop running. We fight back. 2 nights later, Phoenix Haven fought back. Elon deployed Tesla security drones scanning for intruders. AI-driven defenses were activated across the city. The homeless residents, once forgotten, stood together because for the first time they had something to protect. Jimmy, wearing his old combat gear, led a team of veterans into the ruins of the Eastern District. He wasn't a broken man anymore. He was a soldier again. The attackers came. Masked figures slipped through the darkness, armed with firebombs and weapons. But this time, Phoenix Haven was ready. The first attacker never saw the electric net that dropped from above. The second tripped a Tesla stun field, collapsing in spasms. One by one, they were taken down, outsmarted by a city built by the future. Then Jimmy saw him, standing at the edge of the chaos, watching with calculating eyes. A man in a black suit. The ghost from Jimmy's past, Commander Graves. Jimmy's blood turned to ice. Keanu saw the change in Jimmy's face. "You know him." Jimmy's voice was barely a whisper. "He was my leader, the one who ordered us to disappear." Keanu tensed. This wasn't just a random attack. This was unfinished business. 3 days later, an envelope arrived at the city's central headquarters. No return address. Inside was a simple note. "Meet me alone. Midnight, rooftop of Haven Tower. Or the next fire won't be so small." Jimmy read the note, his hands tightening around the paper. Elon frowned. "It's a trap." Keanu leaned forward. "If you go alone, you'll never come back." Jimmy exhaled, folding the note. "I have to." Keanu grabbed his arm. "Jimmy." Jimmy's eyes locked onto his. "This isn't just about the city, Keanu. It's about what I left behind. If I don't face this, it'll never stop." Elon leaned back, staring at the ceiling. Then, after a moment, he smirked. "Fine. Go." Keanu and Jimmy turned to him, startled. Elon's smirk widened. "But you won't go alone." Jimmy frowned. "I told you." Elon tapped a control pad on the table. A holographic screen flickered to life. Tesla security drones, Neuralink surveillance, AI reinforcements. Keanu grinned. "You really thought we'd let you walk into a trap without a backup plan?" Jimmy exhaled, shaking his head. For the first time in years, he wasn't fighting alone. Midnight, Jimmy stood on the rooftop, the wind howling around him. Commander Graves was waiting. He hadn't aged much. Same piercing eyes, same ruthless energy. The man who had erased Jimmy's past. "I knew you wouldn't stay dead," Graves said, smirking. "You were always too stubborn." Jimmy clenched his fists. "You burned my city," Graves shrugged. "Because it shouldn't exist." He took a step forward. "You know the rules, Jimmy. We weren't meant to survive. We were meant to be ghosts." Jimmy's jaw tightened. "Not anymore." Graves chuckled. "You think your little utopia will last? It won't. The world doesn't care about the forgotten." Jimmy took a deep breath. Then he smirked. "Elon Musk does." Graves frowned. "What?" That's when the rooftop lights flickered, and suddenly 100 Tesla security drones rose from the darkness. Keanu stepped forward from the shadows. "You might want to rethink that, Graves." Elon's voice crackled through a drone speaker. "I've got AI satellites recording every word you say. One button, and the world knows everything." Graves's smirk vanished. "You wouldn't." Elon's voice was almost amused. "Try me." Graves looked around, his soldiers already subdued by the city's defenses. For the first time, he wasn't in control. Jimmy stepped closer. "You spent years erasing men like me. Tonight, I erase you," Graves sneered. "You don't have the guts." Jimmy's eyes didn't waver. "I don't have to." He pressed a button on his wristband. An AI command override. The Neuralink system uploaded every classified file on Graves to the world. His crimes, his operations, his betrayals, all exposed. Graves staggered back. "You—" Elon's voice was smug. Checkmate! Graves turned to run, but Keanu stepped in front of him. "Where do you think you're going?" Keanu whispered. For the first time, Commander Graves was the one who disappeared. The city was rebuilt stronger than ever. The world watched in awe. A city once thought impossible was now a beacon of hope, and at its heart stood Jimmy. No longer a forgotten soldier, no longer a ghost. One night, as he looked over Phoenix Haven, Keanu walked up beside him. "Feels different, doesn't it?" Keanu said. Jimmy nodded. "Yeah." He smiled. For the first time in years, he felt alive. Keanu grinned. "So, what's next?" Jimmy smirked. "Let's build another one." Phoenix Haven had become a global phenomenon. News outlets called it the Impossible City. What started as a dream, a city for the forgotten, was now a symbol of second chances. But Elon, Keanu, and Jimmy weren't done. One evening, as the sun set over Phoenix Haven, Elon paced inside his futuristic office, the walls lined with holographic blueprints of new cities. He turned to Jimmy and Keanu. "This is just the beginning," Elon said. His eyes gleamed with ambition. "We're not building one city, we're building 100. Jimmy raised an eyebrow. 100 Phoenix Havens? Keanu leaned back, smirking. "You're talking about a revolution," Elon grinned. "Exactly. They called it Project Rebirth, a mission to build smart, self-sustaining cities across the world, each one a sanctuary for the lost and forgotten. But with new hope came new enemies, because not everyone wanted a world where the forgotten had power." Far away in a shadowy conference room, 7 men in suits sat in silence. They were not politicians. They were the ones who controlled politicians. The leader, a man known only as Lucius Kane, placed a glass of whiskey on the table and turned on the news. "Phoenix Haven's success has inspired a global movement." Lucius exhaled. "Musk is getting out of control." A man across the table scoffed. "It's just one city." Lucius tapped the screen. "And now he's planning 100. His voice dropped to a whisper. "He's changing the rules." Another man leaned forward. "So what do we do?" Lucius sipped his whiskey. "We remind the world that power still belongs to us." His finger hovered over a red button. And just like that, war was declared. 1 week later, the first expansion city, set to be built in New Orleans, was under construction. Jimmy, Keanu, and Elon arrived to oversee the progress. They were greeted like heroes. Homeless families, veterans, and struggling workers gathered in excitement. But then, the power shut down. A second later, a massive explosion rocked the site. People screamed. Smoke filled the sky. Jimmy's instincts kicked in. This wasn't an accident. Through the chaos, a single drone hovered in the air. A message played on its screen. "You are disrupting the balance. Stop, or we will stop you." Elon clenched his jaw. "We've been warned." Keanu looked at Jimmy. "What do we do?" Jimmy wiped dust from his face, his expression stone cold. "We don't stop. We fight." Elon nodded. "Then it's time to take this war to the next level." If their enemies wanted a war, Elon was going to fight it with technology. Within days, Project Shadow Shield was born, a high-tech defensive grid that combined AI-driven security, automated counterattack systems, Tesla drone patrols, Neuralink-powered intelligence gathering. But the real game changer? A citywide EMP defense system capable of neutralizing any digital or cyber attack. As Elon explained the plan, Keanu smirked. "We're building the cities of the future and giving them shields." Jimmy crossed his arms. "Now let's see them try to take us down." The Council of the Old World didn't take defeat lightly. Lucius Kane, watching the rise of Project Rebirth, made his next move. One evening, as Jimmy walked alone through Phoenix Haven, his phone buzzed. "Unknown number." He answered. A cold voice whispered, You should have stayed forgotten. Before Jimmy could respond, gunfire erupted. Bullets sprayed the street. Civilians screamed. Jimmy dived behind a parked Tesla, adrenaline surging. He glanced up. Assassins. But before they could finish the job, a black motorcycle roared into the street. Keanu Reeves, he skidded to a stop, pulling out a modified stun gun. 2 shots, 2 men down. Jimmy smirked. You always make an entrance. Keanu shrugged. I like to keep things cinematic, but the attack wasn't over. More assassins were coming. Then a voice crackled through Jimmy's Neuralink earpiece. Boys, look up. They glanced at the sky. A Tesla airship hovered overhead. Elon Musk had arrived. A hatch opened, and Tesla's latest AI combat drones dropped into the street. The battle for Phoenix Haven had begun. The assassins never stood a chance. With AI precision and Keanu's combat skills, the attackers were neutralized within minutes. But as the last enemy fell, Jimmy found a letter in one of their pockets. A single line was written inside. Phoenix Haven is only the beginning. We will burn every city you build. Jimmy looked at Keanu and Elon. We're not just building cities anymore, Elon nodded. We're waging a war for the future. And as the fires died down, the battle for a new world had only just begun. The attack on Phoenix Haven was just the first strike. The Council of the Old World had made their move, and now it was time for Elon, Keanu, and Jimmy to fight back. Elon stood inside Tesla's underground command center, Project Shadow Shield HQ. Giant screens displayed a world map, red markers blinking over key locations. Cities under threat. Keanu crossed his arms. They're not just after Phoenix Haven, they're after the entire vision. Jimmy studied the screen. New York, London, Tokyo, Paris. The Council wasn't just attacking one city. They were moving against any government, corporation, or visionary trying to change the world. Elon turned to his team. Then we take the fight to them. Jimmy raised an eyebrow. You suggesting we go on the offensive? Elon smirked. Oh, I'm not suggesting. I'm already doing it. Elon had spent decades building the most advanced AI systems on the planet. Now, he was about to unleash them. In seconds, Tesla's AI neural network infiltrated the Council's hidden servers. Bank accounts, drained, private jets, grounded, safe houses, exposed. One by one, the men behind the Council of the Old World were dragged into the light. Jimmy watched in awe. You just made them homeless. Elon chuckled. Fitting, isn't it? Keanu smirked. But that won't stop them. Men like this, they don't give up. They escalate. And he was right, because as soon as the Council realized what was happening, they sent a message, a video file. Jimmy hit play. The screen flickered, revealing Lucius Kane. He was sitting in a dimly lit room, his sharp blue eyes filled with cold amusement. Well played, Mr. Musk, but you seem to have forgotten something. The screen cut to a live video feed, and what they saw made Elon's face go pale. On the screen was Grimes, Elon's ex-wife, the mother of his children. She was tied to a chair, surrounded by masked men. Lucius leaned forward, his voice dripping with mockery. You really thought this was a game of numbers? Money? Technology? He smirked. You forget, Elon. You're still human, and that makes you vulnerable. The message ended. The screen went black,